60 years ago, you had a highly educated black woman doing mathematics for NASA. In 2021, you have the Oregon lunatics insisting that basic mathematics at school level is too hard for black students. That's racist. Hi friends, and welcome to Breaking Woke, and boy do we have a lot of woke to break today. This is the channel where we identify, debunk, and dismantle politically correct ideas. I'm Douglas Kruger, author of the global new book, Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good. The book is now available globally on Audible as well, read by the author. Well, folks, let me ask you a philosophical question, and it's a strange one. Is it possible to be so woke, to be so much of a social justice warrior, that you go right off the edge, come back the other side, and impose apartheid on small black school children? Okay, so here's the background. If you are watching this channel, we debunk politically correct ideas all around the world. We'll pick on Sadiq Khan, who's having a go at statues in London. We'll look at what's happening with laws in Australia. But unfortunately, these days, a great deal of the woke nonsense comes out of the United States, and today is no difference. However, if you watch this channel, you might have picked up that my accent is South African. I was born in South Africa. I was one of the first generation of school kids to see the end of apartheid. And it was a very big deal. Prior to that, black school children had been offered a subpar form of education, and it was done on purely racial grounds. If you were black, you got the lesser version of education. You were taught subpar English, mathematics, if at all, and basic rudimentary skills on the grounds of race. Now, it was a very big deal when I sat down next to my first black colleague in a classroom, and the two of us as students received the same education. That was a massive step forward for our nation, and a necessary one. Right, so it's 2021, and in Oregon, God bless Oregon. This is the place where hippies go when whatever hippie place they're in isn't hippie enough. If you're a hippie plus plus and you add batteries, you go and live in Oregon. These people are unusual. So this has been all over the media, and I'm quoting now from the Washington Examiner. Oregon promoting teacher course on dismantling racism in mathematics. Now, folks, if I were challenged to write a diatribe in woke social justice language, I wouldn't do it with as much of an extremist touch as this, because I'd say, no, that's too far. Even as satire, it just seems too much. Here's the idea. The Oregon Department of Education promoting and encouraging its educators to register for a course that likens modern math instruction to the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture. So this is a newsletter that was sent out by the government body last week, and included this mention of a course called A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction, Dismantling Racism in Mathematics Instruction. Quote, right, white supremacy culture infiltrates math classrooms in everyday teacher actions. So all the things that teachers have been doing for the past century are now sinister. There's something evil about them. Coupled, quote, with the beliefs that underlie these actions, they perpetuate educational harm on black, Latino, and multilingual students. So, teachers, surprise, the maths that you've been teaching for the past century has been harming. It's been doing great harm on racial grounds. I know you didn't know this, but you've been a perpetrator of great evil. So, it continues to say that the program insists that educators identify and challenge the way maths is used to uphold capitalist. It's got to be there, because all of this stuff is Marxist. So you've always got to go straight to capitalist, and that tells you everything you need to know. How maths is used to uphold capitalist, imperialist, and racist views. And it added, it is unequivocally false to assume that maths is an objective discipline. They use the word unequivocally quite often, and to good effect. Now, folks, let's just stop at that word, unequivocal, for just a second. This is the same side of the ideological spectrum that likes to puff up righteously and claim to be the party of science, the spectrum of science. Now, there is perhaps nothing more scientifically pure than mathematics, but they're saying it is unequivocally false to assume that it is objective. I think if you were a real scientist and not an Oregon hippie, you would challenge that 6 ways from Sunday. 1, mathematics is the language of objectivity, it is numerical. 2, that it has nothing to do with white culture, it comes from Phoenician culture, it comes from Arabic culture, it comes from ancient Indian culture, it comes from Greek culture. And yes, somewhere down the line, a few white people took those ideas and advanced them further. And I'm sure to the core of their being, they are desperately sorry for doing so. But imagine the scenario. Go back to an ancient Phoenician and tell him, give him the recommendations of this course and say, it is now important that you not fixate on correct answers, because correct answers hearken forward to white supremacy and a culture that is coming down the line. So instead, you must practice a more tribal and ethnic form of maths that prioritizes wrong answers. The Phoenician would stare at you as though you were a strange and uneducated person from Oregon. I have some serious questions about how you get onto the Board of Education in Oregon. Is it like you have to be able to tie half of your shoes? If you can do the bunny loops part, you can join. If you can write the first half of your name, you qualify. Don't worry about the second half. Insisting that people can write the second half of their name is racist white supremacy. Now, let's get away from the diatribe. Let's just finish with a little bit more of their insane, lunatic language from the left, the sort of poetry of wokeism. It says here, quote, while there is some value in students being able to complete work independently, some value in that, just a little bit, when this is the only or most common avenue for learning or practicing, it reinforces individualism and the notion that I'm the only one. This does not give value to collectivism and community understanding. Objection, Your Honor, collectivism has led to the death by genocide via government starvation of over 100 million people. Collectivism is bad. Okay, anyway, so they say that this doesn't lead to collectivism, and I'd say thank God for that. Collectivism is possibly the most destructive, murderous force the world has ever seen. If you want a formula for genocide, it is prioritizing of the collective over the sanctity of the individual. And they're saying this doesn't do that. Well, thank goodness for that. My main contention with this entire issue is that I believe it is racist. Underlying this idea that teachers requiring correct answers of black students and asking black students to show their work and to engage in the world of mathematics, underpinning the idea that asking them to do that is too much, is, I believe, a racist assumption on their part that they can't do it. That, I think, is what is really going on here. In Apartheid South Africa, it was assumed that young black students couldn't cope with that level of mathematics and that level of education. And thank God that system was overthrown. It was patently racist. Now, here's a group of woke people in Oregon saying, if you expect young black students to get the right answer, to be graded and marked on their answers, and to show their work, then you are being racist against them. I think the exact opposite is happening here. I think that there is a covert assumption on their part that these students are not able to perform these functions, and I think that is the racism. Now, let's just examine for a second black mathematical history in the United States of America. Dr. Thomas Sowell, of course himself a black man, an intellectual who has studied these things, points out in his extensive writings on the topic of charter schools, that in certain all-black charter schools, which were exceptionally well run and insisted on high academic standards, an all-black school had higher average educational performance and mathematical performance than the average of the rest of the nation combined. So the idea that asking young black children to perform at high mathematical levels is racist. They absolutely can. They have proven it before. Black America has mathematical icons. Katherine Johnson, who calculated orbital mechanics for NASA. And folks, this was in the 1960s. In the 1960s, if you're doing the maths, you'll notice that that was 60 years ago. So 60 years ago, you had a highly educated black woman doing mathematics for NASA. In 2021, you have the Oregon lunatics insisting that basic mathematics at school level is too hard for black students. That's racist. That is flat out racist. And here's the weird irony. Part of their reasoning, if you had to ask them to account for this, is they would say that black students have been given subpar education and therefore it is unacceptable to ask them to perform at the level of everyone else. So observe the irony here. In order to solve the problem of subpar education, they are proposing more subpar education. And they're calling high standards in mathematics white supremacy. Now, here's another reason why that's absolutely absurd. The highest standards in mathematics in the United States are by Asian students. So, Asian students outperform white students in mathematics in the United States of America. Why don't they call it Asian supremacy? Be honest, if you're talking about the group that is supreme in mathematics, it is Asian Americans, not whites. We come very much second to Asians in terms of mathematical performance. So, why is it white supremacy? Doesn't make any sense. It's not logic. It's simply not true. What if, instead of politicizing mathematics and trying to turn mathematics into activism, you taught mathematics to black children so that, like Katherine Johnson, you can end up calculating orbital mechanics for NASA 60 years ago? You're implying that no progress has been made since then, and I think that that is racist. Now, here's the real problem. People like myself who try to dedicate ourselves to breaking woke, who try to look at things that harm children around the world of every ethnicity, of every race, of every color, and who try to say, this is wrong and it hurts black kids, we face this delicious little trap that the left has set, where if I try and speak out against it, they go, take a look at your face and your skin color. The reason you're speaking out against it is because you are? Yes, starts with an R. So, there are limits to how much I can do, and I will speak out against this because I'm perhaps blessed with a tough skin. I don't care about being called names. I know that I'm trying to help. But I was asking myself, what would really work here? How do you get rid of this sort of thing that genuinely compromises and hurts the educational performance and future potential of young black students? What do you actually do? And I thought to myself, possibly the best response to this, the most effective one, is for black parents to respond to boards of lunatics like this, to group together and say, you're saying that our children can't do mathematics. That's racist. Now, of course, the lunatic hippies in Oregon and in boards of education like that are hypersensitive to race, which is why they're doing this. It's a form of virtue signaling, and they are utterly brittle about the idea of race. If enough black parents say, you are offering our children subpar education on the grounds that you think they don't have it in them, and that is racist, you can overthrow this. I think you can overthrow it quite easily. You can overthrow it by making a loud noise about how that is racist and how it compromises the educational future of your children. In South Africa, what we did to get rid of low educational standards for black South Africans was to make sure everyone had the same educational standards. That was the goal anyway. We've had some serious difficulties since then. In the United States of America, the same thing applies. If you want young, brilliant, black academic performers to get the best possible education, which is the solution to racial inequality, then you insist on that and you say anything else is racism. If you're trying to teach my black child that it doesn't matter if you get the answer right or wrong, what matters is that you wrote your name on the paper. Or if you're saying that my child can't be marked in a test because somehow that hurts their tribal identity. Okay? You're doing that for your own ego. You're doing that for your own virtue signaling, and it is at the cost of my child's educational future. Thomas Sowell himself, on this very topic, says, if you want to see the poor remain poor, generation after generation, just keep the standards low in their schools and make excuses for their academic shortcomings and personal misbehavior. But please, don't congratulate yourself on your compassion. I think the right people to address this are the black parents who should stand up and say, this is racist, and it has to go. Folks, my name is Douglas Kruger. I'm the author of the global new book, Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good. It is now also available from Audible, and like these videos, the goal of the book is to help you to identify, debunk, and dismantle dangerous ideas from the woke left.